Are we on YouTube? Is this live?
Hello, hello. Are we live?
I'm gonna say we're live. I got the notification that we're live. Hopefully, we did not cut off this week. But welcome back to the Ecosystem Builders Show. We're learning every week as we go. I appreciate you coming back to us. This is a show where we're just a couple of ecosystem builders trying to share our lessons learned, but also interview, talk with others that are doing ecosystem builder work. So if you are a contributor to an entrepreneurial ecosystem, if you are a startup founder or team member and you want to figure out how do I contribute to my local ecosystem, or if you're just curious, we're excited to have you on the show. We got a great one lined up. And with that being said, I'm going to let Richard introduce our two guests today and anything I may have missed about the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So excited to have you all here. This week, very exciting, we are joined by Anika Horn and Aaron Taylor, some of our friends from the ecosystem building. Ecosystem building community from around the country. I will have you each introduce yourselves. Please tell us who you are, where you're from or where you're based, and what you do. Anika, we'll start with you.
My name is Anika Horn. I'm based in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. I live in the mountains. And what I do, I put it simply, I think ecosystems and their builders need support, and I'm here to help. I really abhor the term consultant, so I try to stay away from that. But I really love working with ecosystems, figure out their hardest challenges, help them convene people in a meaningful way, move their ecosystem forward in an impactful direction by, building trust, building relationships. I also do a lot of storytelling for ecosystems and really lean into the event design and facilitation part. I host a podcast called Ecosystems for Change, 7 seasons under my belt, and I just wrote my first book called It Takes a Valley, which is a part narrative, part playbook for entrepreneurial ecosystem builders, in which I feature 54 ecosystem builders from the US and beyond and share their experiences in the field according to, different topics and just mindsets and skills that we need in order to do this work.
Anika, so glad to have you. Thanks for joining us. Aaron, you're up. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Hey everyone, my name is Aaron Taylor. I'm from Columbia, South Carolina, currently based in Chesapeake, Virginia. I am a multitude of things, I guess. Probably all ecosystem builders are. Started off as a startup attorney, grew into community building, and along the way just became an advocate for institutions trying to operate more effectively in innovation ecosystems. So between working with founders, working with institutions and community partners, I am an innovation ecosystem builder. I started the podcast Ecosystem Scale to tackle some of the tensions and the more subtle questions of the work that we do. Founders want to build, higher ed institutions want to translate research, economic developers want stronger communities, investors want to fund successful ventures. Well, why isn't this all working out as smoothly as we write it down? Well, that's because there's a lot of things going on in the mix that, ecosystem builders have to deal with day to day, but we just don't get the opportunity all the time to Anika's point, storytell. And so my podcast is to really get under the skin of the flows of the innovation pipeline and understand what are the tensions and dynamics that really drive founder growth and success, and ultimately community success. And
Amazing.
Thank you guys for having me here. I'm really excited for this conversation amongst esteemed colleagues.
Oh, we're so excited to have both of you. Thank you so much for hopping on and joining us. We have all spent time together in person at various conferences or in online spaces. Can we all just kind of share how we met each other, like us individually to each of the three other folks on this kind of show here? Who wants to start?
I feel like this is like the string exercise where we're like tossing it to see how we're all connected. Have you done one of those?
No.
Okay. Who do you think so the first kind of node or first kind of connection? Would it be Richard and Anika?
It has to be Richard.
Aaron?
I just met Richard, and I haven't met you in person, Austin. So it can't be me.
But is it Anika? You met Anika before you met me.
I met you both. Well, so the interesting thing is that when I first started ecosystem building and made a decision that this is what I want to do, like I really think there's a strategic edge in this, I started looking for podcasts on ecosystem building. And Ecosystems for Change was the podcast for me. And when I heard the stories, I just fell in love. I was like, oh man, this is really the work that I can really attach myself to. But I just met Anika in person a few weeks ago in Philadelphia with you. And then I met you. So again, I think Anika, I think you might be the first node. You are actually through the podcast for me, the first node.
Thank you. Richard, I know we know each other through SCN, and Austin, you and I also through SCN. I just can't place the summit. Austin, you and I, apparently the policy summit, but really hung out at Augusta, Georgia.
Yep.
Spent some time. And Richard, I know you've been involved with SCN, but we never really had a chance to sit down and chat until most recently when we were technically and had our, what was it? Coffee and Cries session.
Coffees and
Cries.
Is that the morning version of Whiskey and War Story?
Yeah.
Exactly. It was just too early for whiskey. So we were like, Coffee and Cries.
You should come to Louisville. It's never too early. Bourbon City. Let's go.
Yeah. Anika, my first summit was Des Moines. Des Moines. And I think I had known about you through your podcast before then. And I was like, wow, she is intimidating and scary. And so
me?
to all the
nicest person you'll ever meet, Richard.
That's a fact.
I know that now, but that's like, I feel like that's not unique. That's like my and some other people's personalities when they see people who are in an industry or in the field or somewhere else that is well known, right? It's like it may be intimidating to approach them and say hi. And so 100%. I felt like you had held that status for me for a while. And so we shared the space in Des Moines, and then I went to a couple other summits, and then you were a co-host for Shenandoah Valley. Yeah. And we didn't really get to chat there either, but I gave you those mugs, remember?
Oh yeah. I do.
Oh yeah. That was like bring a gift from your ecosystem for like a local host or a dinner host. And I brought 3 mugs from 3 of our local ESOs. And I gave it to Anika. And then we really hung out at Technically in Philly. And we were doing our thing, Anika, me, you, Debbie, and Aaron walks up, and Charlton was there too. Me, you, Debbie, Charlton. Aaron, you walk up. I'm like, hey, join us. Welcome. And that's how we got together, all of us. And in Austin, where do we meet?
I would probably say Augusta is really where we connected quite a bit. Were you at Policy Summit in DC? No. So yeah, it would have had to be, yeah, I would say it would have been Augusta because I don't think you were at NBIA in Atlanta.
No, it was, I'm remembering that it was Roses and Thorns.
Yes.
In Augusta. And I was our group facilitator, and that's the first time we really got to chat.
And there was bourbon there. Okay, so we've got that, and then Anika for Policy Summit in DC, and then Aaron. Here we are, first time today.
Here we are, first time. Were you working with Eric Parker in Augusta, Richard?
I was, yeah. I came down a bit early, helped Eric put together some of the show things. The lightning talks was my big
was awesome.
thing.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes.
Those were amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you guys so much. Eric and team really put the content together. I made all the tech work, and a great team.
You
That's
should hit the
huge.
applause button for that. Yeah,
Hold
that
on.
is
I got.
well done.
Here we go. Wait, is it working?
I don't need applause. It's okay.
Oh my god.
Ever so
Okay.
humble.
Come on, technical glitch.
All
All right.
good.
It's so funny, we in one of my episodes with Amy Beard, we talk about how ecosystem builders have such a hard time balancing humility and advocating for themselves. So it's just one of the personality rifts, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, now that we've gone through how we met, we do have a segment that we'd like to ask, and we're gonna jump straight into it. And I do want to come back to your podcast, but I think there's another segment we have planned that will fit really well in. So our first segment, we asked Ashley this last week, but I'd love to hear from each of you. What is an ecosystem builder to you, and what does ecosystem building mean?
I'll go first. There is a wonderful person here in Stanton, Virginia. His name is Chris Lassiter. He works for the Community Foundation. And I think his official title is something like Outreach Community Liaison. But what Chris really does, and he's a former reporter, which is like adds really nicely to his skill set. He shows up at every event. He constantly introduces people. And every time someone says, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, I'm starting this, he's like, hey, let me connect you to so-and-so who's already done this, who's in the process of doing it, who did it 5 years ago. And he is constantly connecting people. He shows up to everything. He always brings some interns along. I don't know where he finds all these interns, but he's just constantly connecting people. I feel like he's paid to get coffee with anyone in town and their mother. And to me, that's an ecosystem builder. It's someone who's just always head on a swivel, trying to figure out who needs to meet who to get this thing done, to take the next step. And I don't know that Chris would ever call himself that, but to me, that is an ecosystem builder, a convener, a connector, constant storyteller, always pitching the media about cool stuff happening in the community. And what I so appreciate about him is comes back a little bit, I think, to the humility piece. He says he loves getting people on the bus, but he's not going to be the one that drives. So he knows about himself that he's really good at rallying people together, but he doesn't want to be in the driver's seat and move everything forward, which makes it really helpful in working with him because I know Chris is going to bring the people, Chris is going to bring the ideas, but then he's going to hand it over to someone like me and be like, now, can you go do this for the next 6 or 12 months and make sure it turns into something? So to me, he is a textbook ecosystem builder. And that's also what ecosystem building is constantly making these connections, building relationships, make sure people start to trust each other, lower their barriers, create some serendipity, and off you go.
I love that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes.
Aaron.
A +1 on that answer.
Retweet.
It's such a simple question, but it's such a great question because ecosystem builder has various definitions across the spectrum. In addition, I think from the ecosystem level, right? It's just broadly the individual or the entity that is contributing to the flow of venture activity, whether that be through convenings, whether that be through funding, programmatic support. But I think Anika's answer is really kind of like the crux of really the work that we have to do: trust building, convenings, that invisible work, being attuned to the invisible work, that makes doing this work right so difficult. I think she hit the nail on the head. I would only add that I think the difference between the very generic definition of contributing to the ecosystem versus the actual person who does this work effectively is a systems approach, systems thinking, not really attacking these problems through one specific lens, but understanding that as an ecosystem, each stakeholder is tied to the other in some way. And understanding that when we go about contributing to an ecosystem, we're addressing a complex problem. And so we have to incorporate a multitude of perspectives and not just one. And a lot of times, at the most basic level, implementing a systems approach is going to be the fundamental difference between success and inefficiency.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. I think, my definition or how I explain ecosystem building to people is constantly evolving based on new information and new experiences and things that I hear from all our fellow ecosystem builders. And so that's very interesting because where I've come to now, which is different than last week and different than the week before, I started off with this trust component, right? I led with ecosystem builders build trust. And this is something I heard from Charlton at a dinner that we had in Buffalo when he was explaining ecosystem building to one of our mutual connections that didn't know ecosystem building. And he said, ecosystem builders build trust between organizations and build a social capital so when the entrepreneurs need something, we can lend it to them. We can make a connection and they'll get a meeting, right? We can do that in an ecosystem. And I think that is very important. But I think that is also a part of what we do and not all of it, because then we add in convenings, we add in it's kind of this relationship kind of one-on-one, we add in some mentorship, we add on some technical support, right? I think I really like when organizations or fields or anything can explain what they do in one line. And so I'm trying to figure out what that is. And a good starting point for me is ecosystem builders advance entrepreneurship in their region, or insert whatever, in their service area, geography, whatever you care about or work in. And so ecosystem builders advance entrepreneurship by doing all of these other things, right? And we go back to project managers as the analog of field building. And we look at project managers, and they were in a thing in the 90s, and they've done all this. Project managers move projects along. Project managers make sure things get done, right? Ecosystem builders advance entrepreneurship by doing X, Y, Z, because project managers aren't emailers. They aren't task trackers. They aren't just meeting leaders. They do all those things in service of moving a project along, right? I think ecosystem builders, to me now, in one line, advance entrepreneurship.
Yep.
Austin, any hot takes for you?
So I was just writing down what each of you said. One thing that Aaron said was just this systems approach. That really kind of stood out to me because it's well, what's the difference between just a member of the community versus a builder? And I really think, you know, you hit that on the head, which is like taking that kind of systems thinking. Like it's more than the one-off, but it's the commitment to almost continuously be thinking, how do I support and address from a systemic approach? Because I think, like, to me, convening, funding, all of that is the how, but it's not necessarily like addressing like what it is, or like the why behind it. You know, storytelling is part of a how. I think, I don't know. I feel like we're episode 3 in, like you said, Richard. It's like now the more people we have on, I'm like, this is changing. This is both getting more complex and more simple at the same time of like what this is. But I think your simple statement of advancing entrepreneurship, I think that's really good. I do feel like it is missing some of the connection part
Yeah.
of what we do, because that came up in every single one of your answers. Is the connection, being that you can't have an ecosystem with single contributors.
Yeah.
And so I would almost like just add on to yours of like, it is the advancing entrepreneurship through connection, or that's not it, but like, where is that connected piece to it?
Ecosystem builders connect resources and organizations to support entrepreneurs, right? I want to shift advancing entrepreneurship to like the people that we help and support. And at the end of the day, it is a individual person, an entrepreneur in our community that ultimately benefit from the work that we're doing, right? It's not the organizations and the technical assistance folks or the ESOs necessarily. It is, to me, how do I help specific entrepreneurs, people, have a better time starting and growing businesses? And so I think it's important to have that people first language of we support entrepreneurs somewhere in there. And yes, through connection, by connecting them to resources or connecting resources to build a better system, something like that. Yeah.
Any reactions, Aaron, or on?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost an endless loop. I think that it's important to also, when we try to define it, also try to point out why is this work important, right? Because again, an endless loop. There are so many stakeholders that can say, well, in this initiative or at the front of our org or activity, we advance entrepreneurship. At what point does advancing entrepreneurship actually become ecosystem building?
Yeah.
Right. I think that, gosh, it's why we're having. I think that's why. Would you all call it coffee and cries?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like the crux of the coffee and cries. It's like it's not, how do we aggregate resources for our work? It's more so, how do we actually translate the unique edge that we present in advancing entrepreneurship in our work? And again, there are various reports and that's a whole nother endless loop. But I think to accompany defining ecosystem building, we also have to include, why is ecosystem building important? And you would have to understand, or you would have to begin breaking out, I guess, this hypothesis that, strong, vibrant, diverse communities repeatedly produce strong, viable, capable founders that can scale, right? Because, again, from my perspective, ecosystem builders don't necessarily approach the founder. They approach the ecosystem. Of course, all of the work is focused and directed to resourcing the founder. To Charlton's point, at the time that they need it with what they need, right? But how do we in mass, how do we surface those needs at the time that at the time those founders need those resources? We have to have an ecosystem approach. We have to have an ecosystem level perspective. That's where ecosystem building becomes relevant, because now we're not talking about economic development. Now we're not talking about founder education. We're talking about a level of activity that pervades throughout the community at various vantage points. I think what makes a strong ecosystem builder isn't just the ability to produce programming or to manage a program, but to align. If I were a program manager, right, I'm not looking to just produce a program. I'm looking to align the program with the stakeholder next door. Um, I'm looking to create a pipeline of volunteers that may potentially one day take my job or potentially one day become founders. You know, I'm storytelling. I am storytelling not just in my local community, but throughout the region to attract more participants into the program, more supporters into the program, right? That's not that's not managing a cohort.
Hmm.
That is a systems level integration of this program across the ecosystem, right? And comparing the results of that approach versus the very uh, single lens program implementation is where we make the argument for ecosystem building. Okay, with this single lens, I was able to, drive 5 founders through our program as a single cohort. Okay, and what happened after that? Why should we fund you next year? Where are the founders now? Are you still having trouble aggregating resources? What partners did you attract with that program, right?
Mhm.
Well, if I'm just focusing on programming and churning out participants, that output is probably very limited. But at the ecosystem level, which is something that we're almost forced to adopt when you're doing this type of work because resources are so limited, the ecosystem begins scaling in very organic ways this output that sometimes we can measure, sometimes we can't. But we just know that because we took this approach, because we got more people, more perspectives involved, we have a lot more to work with across the board. That's where the story gets told. That's where the edge begins to become translatable. It's not immediately translatable, right? But that's where you actually have a story to begin translating.
Yeah, I one thing I'm hearing in there a lot is like the long term gain of this, of like making investments and making bets today that's really going to impact someday down the road. But you're not just thinking of the short term results. You're not just thinking of the short term reporting and metrics, but um, and that's not even, it doesn't even sound like that's necessarily the motivation of the ecosystem builder. Like, yes, we should solve entrepreneurs challenges today, but I think as the ecosystem we're looking at, well, what are the systemic challenges creating this entrepreneur to have this barrier? Is it a lack of education? Is it the way funding is structured? Is it politics and gatekeeping? And how do we start to address that now so it does have the long-term impacts to prevent future entrepreneurs from running into those barriers? um, would you say long-term thinking is almost like a necessary skill set of the ecosystem builder, or a differentiator maybe?
I think felt said it, and then we've just been repeating it. But this is the work of a generation, right?
Yeah.
You need to take a generational perspective to this work. And one thing I learned from Chris Hively that I really appreciate is take a long-term view. If you're just here for 2 years, like why bother doing this
Mhm.
work? It takes a long time to build these relationships. But what Chris taught me was, because this is a complex adaptive system and things are constantly changing, take a short-term approach to testing things. So
Mm.
instead of your 5-year strategy, have a North Pole. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have a strategy. We should. But have your North Star maybe 5 years from now, but run little experiments to see what works in the current climate and iterate your way forward, which is what we always tell entrepreneurs to do, right?
Mhm.
Is
Mhm.
take a lean approach, see what works, see what doesn't. And that really allows you to stay up to date with the environment, the ecosystem you're in. It allows you to stay up to date with what founders are facing, how their parameters are shifting. So yes, I think it is a long-term commitment. If you want to do any systems change work, you got to be in it for the long run. Otherwise, I think you're kind of wasting your time if you're looking for quick. Not that there aren't quick wins, but if you think you can turn a community around or shift something within the first 6 months, more power to you, but it's probably going to take longer than that.
I think that was really important what you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think that's the part that I struggle with the most, which is why I'm still kind of digesting that advice, because I'm when I was first introduced to ecosystem building, um, it was almost like a natural. It seemed natural. It seemed natural to me to think at the systems level. What is a challenge for me though is responding operationally in the short term.
Mm.
And so personally in my development, that's been my challenge, bridging my strategic visionary mindset to the immediate, iterative operational processes that we have to do in the short term. How many of you all have that challenge?
Richard, go ahead, man. You look like you're just like ready.
I think often, right? It's what is the next step and what is the action item that moves the needle. And sometimes we don't know what moves the needle until we do it and test it. And to Anika's point, right? Rapidly iterate on it. And so I think feel like in the work that I do, there's so many possibilities, so many paths we can go down, and we just have limited time, bandwidth, and resources. And knowing or having a good idea of what might make sense to do that is accomplishable, that moves the needle, it's hard for me. And I have to, think about that, work on that. Absolutely. Right there with you.
In my most recent role as director of ecosystem building here in the Shenandoah Valley, I took that approach, and I will forever appreciate anyone who can do this consistently, because it was so hard. Every 3 months, so once a quarter, we would sit down as a team, take everything we'd learned from the regional coalition about what gaps are we hearing, what challenges are we hearing, who has what. We would map what's there. We would try to figure out what needs filling, and then give ourselves 12 weeks to actively work on that. Not just us as a team, but us as a team with partners from the coalition. And you do that 4 or 5 times. It is exhausting. I mean, every time you sit down, you figure out, what KPIs are we going to look at to see whether we're actually moving forward? And it takes so much discipline to do this work and to do this work with others. We would sit down, we had these giant flip charts, and we would write things down, and we would have deadlines for things. It was grueling at times to say, do we really have to talk about this event that nobody actually came to and we all just want to forget about? But now we got to talk about, why did no one come, or why did only 3 people show up? And then this other random event that we slept together last minute had the best possible turnout, and that wasn't even on our radar. And you're constantly questioning yourself. It's almost like being an ecosystem researcher. It takes so much more diligence and discipline to follow through that I will forever chapeau to everyone who does it. I will forever appreciate that kind of work.
I think the other thing you said earlier is, how do we get better at basically practicing what we're preaching? Like if we're teaching entrepreneurs, hey, like take this like lean approach, and like how can you strip this back to its bare bones and then try and execute on that? And if you prove that, then let's build it. Like I think because we do so much work with people, we want to get it right, like every time from the get-go, and then we allow the concepts of whatever we're working on to grow and grow and grow, and pile that with perfectionist personalities, and it's like this we're putting obstacles in our own way. And so how can we really practice what we preach of like, well, what would the lean version of this be? What can we test initially, and if we get some good proof points there, build out on that, and dump the perfectionist nature, which is its own challenge beyond this work.
I think, I agree with all of the above. Aaron, you mentioned earlier when you discovered this work, when you got into ecosystem building. Can you share when? Tell us the story of how you discovered ecosystem building and knew that you were a ecosystem builder. Aaron, and then, yeah. No, you're muted. There you go.
Okay. Yeah. So I was on the board of an entrepreneur organization in Columbia, South Carolina. We were originally focused solely on a network of growth stage founders. It was a board primarily of growth stage founders. I, was there as kind of, well, I was on the board, but it was kind of like a privilege for me to, in a legal capacity, serve the organization as well. We didn't know much about community building. What we knew was that there was a gap of resources for founders at that level in our community. And we wanted those founders to have a sense of community, essentially a shoulder to cry on. So we had lots of meetups. We had happy hour, and we had coffees. So if anybody ever wants to do community building in South Carolina, just know that beer is the key to our hearts. And that was really the extent of our work. We had lunch and learns and happy hours. Our local government in Columbia, and kudos to them, contracted with Chris Ivory to come into the community and to assess the community and to basically catalyze founder activity. And so under his Build the Fort initiative, he came in, he did a slew of founder interviews, and he presented his findings to us one evening. And it's so funny. It was very miraculous for me because at the time I had just started my law practice. I had like no clients. And I was just supporting the startup community because it was what I believed in. And my thinking was, the more I can help founders develop and gain their trust, the more of a client pipeline that would be for me. when Chris came to town, he essentially gave us a review that everybody at GrowCo on the board, we already knew. We had already been talking about. We just didn't have a framework, a strategy, or any leverage to actually do the work. So when he gave his review after the after his presentation, we were all kind of like milling about, networking, shaking hands. I went up to him, I introduced myself, and I said, "Hey, if you along the way, if you help any founders, if you interview any founders and they're looking for an attorney, I'm the guy. Like, just I'd be more than happy to share with you the work that I do, have a virtual call with you." I'm thinking this guy doesn't care about me. I'm like a very young face in a crowd of economic developers, founders, the who's who of Colombia. Um, the oh, Literally the following day, I think, Chris emails me and says, "Hey, I want to sit down." And him and another founder in the community that I had not met before, real under the radar dude, Joe Queenan. Joe Queenan and Chris Hively and I met in downtown Columbia, and we just talked. And it just so happened that, I know this is a long-winded story, but I think it's very interesting because it shows how ecosystem building works. And it just so happened that, parallel to the conversation I had with Chris, we on the board of GrowCo were trying to figure out how do we help Chris. And we concluded that what we'll do is we'll just lend our organization to Chris to implement his build the fort strategy. So he can work through GrowCo to implement that strategy. And so, long story short, um, you know, Chris came onto our board and through GrowCo implemented the build the fort strategy. And I was right there literally the whole time, working hand in hand with him, implementing his strategy in Colombia. And we started off, with founder roundtable, founder meetups. We evolved that into, uh, you know, single presentations from each founder, giving their pitch on their pitches in peer groups. We built out kind of like a community creed, invested in our own innovation space, the Boyd Innovation Center, fundraised for that. And, I was there for the whole ride. And it, there was a difference between working in the community and putting forth best efforts alongside GrowCo for your community, like hoping this works, building trust in one-off relationships, versus actually seeing a strategy be implemented at scale and seeing how momentum is catalyzed and scaled.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing and I've lived, and I was very fortunate to live both experiences, and I was very fortunate that my first experience in ecosystem building was alongside Chris Ively. But seeing that work and being a part of that work, it immediately clicked for me that this is a very particular edge, not just in building community, but in scaling ventures. And I tested that methodology in my own work with other initiatives, and I have found that it is an engine for scaling growth. And I just, once I realized how successful it could be, a systems approach could be, um, I've just vowed to myself to master it and see what I can build.
Wow. Yeah. What a great experience and path and story to hear and now. And, Anika, can we hear your story?
Yeah, certainly. Mine was really, I kind of happened into it. Before I moved to the US, I worked for a social enterprise incubator in Germany. I tell the whole story in my book, but experience what it's like when support organizations are really siloed and fragmented, and what a disservice we're doing to entrepreneurs by expecting them not only to become experts on how to build a business, but also on how to navigate the ecosystem. And then in 2015, I moved to the US, landed in Richmond, Virginia, full time, and saw the complete opposite. I met Larkin Garby really early on, who some of you may know, Todd Knuckles. Those were the two, to me, key ecosystem builders in Richmond. And they just put the wind under my wings. They're like, hey, you want to help? Cool. At this point, I didn't have a green card. I couldn't officially work. So I just volunteered with everything they were doing. They were running a high growth accelerator. They were putting on events. They did storytelling. And I was like, cool, put me in, coach. Lycan got me or brought me along to Santa Barbara, the first official SCN summit. I met Andy Stoll. So I was there for the first summit, and it just kind of went from there. I had this moment that I'm sure every one of us has these moments where someone for the first time explained to me what an ecosystem builder is. And I looked around and I was like, wait, what? You all are also doing this? Like in your community, somewhere in a random part of the US? You're telling me that outside of your full-time jobs, you are also making connections, grabbing coffee with entrepreneurs, hosting events, introducing people all the time. Wow. Like I didn't know there were other people. And that's what you call it, ecosystem building. And there is power to having language to describe what it is you're doing. So I had that moment. From there, I went to the eShip Summit, and I was just drinking from the fire hose. I kid you not. Every eShip Summit I went to, my feet would swell up. I would put in 16-hour days. I would write until my hand hurt on my way home, because I was like, I have all this knowledge, and I'm so worried that if there's turbulence on the plane, some of this knowledge is going to fall out and I will never have it again. So I just wrote and wrote. These are the days of Medium. So
Yes.
I put every heartfelt insight onto Medium as a blog post. So yeah, I think I learned early on what it means to be an ecosystem builder for me, and was just fortunate to meet the right people early on who kind of put me on this track. And yeah, so I've been doing this for 10 years under this name and will not shut up about it.
Well, a common thread like there between both of your stories is like you got connected to others that are also doing this to be able to pour into you. But then you ran with it, and you both ran with it in a way that has ultimately resulted into storytelling. And with storytelling, and you all both also mentioned this earlier when we asked you, well, what is an ecosystem builder? You mentioned story as part of both of your answers. And so I'd be curious, now that we've heard your personal story, how did you get to storytelling being such a large part of what you do? Or I don't know, can you talk about how you maybe even see storytelling within ecosystem building, and why you might be leaning into that quite a bit?
I will start with I think one of the main reasons for starting the podcast for me was I wanted other people who maybe have heard of ecosystem building to have that moment of, wait, there are other people doing this? So that was my way of inviting other people in if they couldn't attend an SCN summit. But more generally, the storytelling
That's so
piece.
funny. I mean, we were just saying that's how we got here today. I had that
Exactly.
exact same feeling. That's amazing.
I love it. To me, very simply, storytelling means holding up a mirror to a community and saying, hey, this is all the cool stuff that is already happening. I think it's really easy to look at a community and see all the places that need to be fixed and repaired and improved. To me, that is not terribly helpful. I think holding up a mirror, championing and celebrating what's already there and doubling down on all the cool things already happening, that's how you build on strength. That's how you build on what you already have. And there's no better way to do it than through storytelling. And for me, this started out when I lived in Richmond. I would learn about all these awesome startups, like a high-end moonshine company. Did you know that almost every kind of spirit has a premium version, but not moonshine? And these guys were like, that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a premium brand of moonshine and ship this across the United States. And they did. And I love that stuff. And I'm not a moonshine drinker, but the design is beautiful. The moonshine tastes fantastic. They were really clever. They said, we will bring the booze and the bartender to any startup event around town to get the name out and to provide, like Aaron said, if you're ever in South Carolina, it's beer. I feel like in Richmond, it's craft beer and it's moonshine. And I was like, this company is amazing. Like, I need everyone to know about them. Another startup created a virtual solution for parents and caregivers of children with autism. So it was a full-on social enterprise, tech-enabled. And I was like, this is phenomenal. Like, why doesn't everyone know about this? So I would just talk about and shout it from the rooftops of Richmond, all the cool companies that I was seeing and meeting, whether people wanted to hear it or not. And I think it helped create that narrative in the community of, oh no, we do have cool stuff going on.
Mhm.
And it's Main Street business, it's creatives, it's your high growth startup, it's tech enabled, consumer packaged goods. There's just something for everyone. And I constantly was looking around being like, y'all are seeing this, right? This is really cool. Richmond has it going on, which is why I'm so excited that the next ASEAN Summit is going to be in Richmond, because
Mhm.
going back 10 years later and showing where all these companies are at is so phenomenal. So to me, storytelling is strength finding. I think our job as ecosystem builders is to find these unique stories and to amplify them as much as we can so that the community sees what's possible for them. And I feel like it's always a good North Star. Peter Block says it best. He says it's about the conversation a community has with itself about what it wants to be. And I think that's really important for founders to come together and be like, wouldn't it be cool if our city was known for XYZ? If 15 startups in our community did this, and then suddenly you have something really positive, forward looking to work towards. And then why wouldn't you? And storytelling is a ton of fun, as we're experiencing right now. So to me, it is one of the essential tools for an ecosystem builder. That doesn't mean if you're not into storytelling, you can't be an ecosystem builder. You can. I think they're very different archetypes of ecosystem builders. I just happen to fall into the category of will not stop talking, as you're experiencing right now. Talk about founders, get excited. That is one of the things I really enjoy doing. And I think it's really helpful in moving a community forward.
Where was it? Anika, do you remember, or does anyone remember where was it when we did a session about these archetypes, right? Of different types
Shenandoah
of.
Valley. It
Okay,
was the last day here in the valley.
we need to do that again.
I know. I thought it was fantastic. It's very, very helpful. I feel like that's the next stage. We all have a somewhat understanding of ecosystem building. I think moving into the archetype conversation allows us to help more people self-identify and maybe even see which different elements we need. What does professional development look like? Absolutely. That was fun.
Can we see if we can get it on the summit agenda for Richmond?
So the good news is, I think that idea originally came from Debbie Irwin, who helped organize the Valley Summit, who's now in Richmond organizing the Richmond Summit.
Good. We'll just have to nudge. It'll be great. And along those lines earlier, I was thinking, right, like a session like this with the archetypes, but also a field conversation around mission, vision, values, and see if we can coalesce something that makes sense to people.
I'm here for it.
Cool. Aaron, sir.
Oh.
Okay, bye.
I'm out. So you hit on a lot of elements there while we're waiting for Aaron to pop back on, but I think one of them was like the part of ecosystem building is making sure that our community believes that like it is possible, and the power of storytelling within that. I think especially founders, if you're heads down building your company, you don't necessarily you're not necessarily going to all the events to know what else is going on. You might not be reading the news for the local stories. Like your heads down. And so how do we as ecosystem builders tell that story as often as possible in as many places as possible, but also in as many mediums as possible, which you're writing from before Medium, and then you had the podcast, and then now you have a book. Have What have you kind of maybe learned across storytelling across multiple mediums? Like, is there yeah, I'll just pause there because I don't want to lead you in any direction. I'd just be curious, having done multiple mediums, what have you learned?
I have learned that I really would have loved to be a newscaster. Every time I'm on the podcast, I'm like, this is the best. I am so in the zone. Everything flows. It's just the most enjoyable way for me to tell stories. Um, Writing is great because it is more long lasting. But do people still read long form content? I don't know. I guess we're about to find out. But I've
Right.
also learned that it is easier now than it has ever been to tell stories on different mediums. I mean, you still have to put in the work to find a good story, to produce a good story, but to then share it across different channels is easier than it has ever been before.
Hmm.
Also, when I first started out, like you would do an Instagram post with one picture and you had to force everything into that. And now we are all like walking production teams who can, like, you can take your phone into a business and sit down with the founder for 3 minutes and have a quick chat and share stories in these ways. You can send press releases fairly straightforward and quickly. I don't know. To me, it's really exciting everything that each and every single one of us can do without spending crazy amounts of money. And to me, the trick is if you find others in your ecosystem who also enjoy this, for each of them to own a little bit the beat that they're most excited about, be it tech, be it Main Street, whatever it is, and just constantly have these stories coming out on whatever channel, because none of them have to be perfect. None of them have to be Oscar winning. There just has to be a constant stream of news so that this always stays front and center and people start to understand this is not an outlier. This is something that is constantly happening in our community.
One thing I always share if I'm working on a project is like, one thing that drives me is moving our community from a what if to I can mindset. But there's so
Cool.
much within that. Like, part of it is if I'm in a what if mentality, I'm trying to figure out, do I have the things I need? But I think storytelling helps with the belief side of like, oh, others have done this. I'm seeing that others have done this. I'm reading about this. I'm seeing them in person, watching videos. And so how much storytelling can impact the belief side beyond the resources and the tactical, which I think that belief can hold a huge, huge piece in the success of the community and the success of that entrepreneur.
And I like to think that storytelling can move you from the what if to the I can. Because once you've seen someone else in your community do something, it is not just inspiring. It might actually show you the steps of, oh, wait, if Dan over there managed to start a skateboard company out of his garage, then what is stopping me from starting insert whatever business you want to start? And now I know who to reach out to and chat with to see if they have any pointers. And most entrepreneurs are so happy to share what they've learned the hard way.
Exactly. Aaron, what
Yes.
tell us about yours, like, how you approach storytelling, or your perspective
Yeah.
on storytelling.
I think I was doomed from a storyteller. I was always had an affinity for writing. And then when you take someone who loves to read and loves to write, and and he grows up, and you're always around church people, church folk, who are telling stories themselves and using storytelling to communicate, why we live the way we live. I think that, um, growing up in South Carolina, it's a, it has a rich history. It has a oftentimes conflicted, and tense history as well. And, very much the way we live is wrapped up in the stories that we tell. And then to just add cream on all of that foundation, I became an attorney. And, the core of advocacy is storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't manifest in that way. um, but the mechanics of it is storytelling. So I've been a storytelling in how I've been a storyteller in how I've been raised in my culture, and I've been a storyteller by training. So it was almost natural for me when I began discerning problems in my local startup community to write about it. If you looked on LinkedIn, some of my earliest articles are just me storytelling, about what I've seen in the community, and a bit of analysis to go along with it. I didn't know what I was doing then. It was just very natural for me. And so the podcast wasn't something that came naturally to me. It's not something that I wanted to do, honestly. It was something that was strongly impressed upon me, and I had an opportunity to do it. So I took the opportunity to do it. But I think a lot of the early success and momentum that I've been able to generate is because, uh, I've been able to lean on a long history of storytelling. So it's as I mentioned before, systems thinking and ecosystem building kind of fit naturally to me when I first saw it in practice. And I think part of the reason why it fit so naturally was because I had been storytelling long before I actually saw the strategic framework of building a narrative and turning it actually into community momentum and community advocacy.
With both of you, you both have storytelling assets, if you will, channels, whatever we want to call them. You both have podcasts. Anika, you have a book about to come out. I'd be curious, maybe if you could each tell us a little bit more about what each of those are, maybe who they're for, what you typically talk about, maybe audience, anything like that. And we'll start there. I do have a follow-up question, but I don't want to give you too much homework all at once.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. So when I was really focused on venture capital and private equity in law school, and I would listen to podcasts to prepare me for that type of work. And one of my favorite podcasts to listen to was the Private Equity Fund Cast. Uh, and then later, I picked up another podcast called Capital Allocators, which is now kind of like the primary model that I follow for ecosystem scale because I love it so much. But essentially, the mission of ecosystem scale is to help the 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 developing ecosystem builder, no matter what your level of experience is, with becoming a better ecosystem builder. Um, I am much more focused on delivering to my audience the knowledge that I wish that I had 4 years ago. Um, Building alongside Chris was a great experience. But when I started running my own initiatives, man, I ran into so many roadblocks. I ran into trust issues. I ran into information gaps and resource gaps and misalignment of incentives. I didn't I didn't have a sense of all that coming into this work, right? I didn't have a sense of the reality of coming into this work. I think that, you know, this is not to speak ill of Chris Hively, but there is something to say when, the co-founder the retired co-founder of MapQuest comes into your small emerging startup community and begins moving things forward, right? Things he he carries naturally a level of gravity. And in his humility, you would never know it, but in his work, he carries a reputation. And so a lot of the work that we had benefited from that gravity. Um, and and that streamlined a lot of things. And so in practice, I didn't have uh, that element of leverage in my work. And so the reality of what it takes to align systems really came to bear when I started working and leading my own initiatives. And so ecosystem scale is meant to deal with those realities, those tensions. And it's really for everyone. It's really hard for a stakeholder who works in corporates, who's responsible for creating strategic partnerships with universities. Let's say, how do I leverage the local university's uh, intellectual property or translational research pipeline into corporate IP or into some type of licensing partnership, right? I might be tasked with that, right? But if I don't know the culture, the tempo of, university research, of a tech transfer office, well, then the programming and the way I go about relationship building is, for the most part, it's going to be rooted in my past experiences in corporate, not in, not necessarily what's really effective for building a partnership, a sustainable partnership with a university. And that happens at every level, from economic developer to ESO, from university to founder community. At every level, right, there are these mismatches, but we're all part of the same innovation ecosystem. So ecosystem scale really lays bare those different perspectives, those different dynamics. And with a group of speakers that I'm really proud to call friends and colleagues, and I'm really proud to have gotten them on my show, we kind of like lean into their knowledge. Like, how have you been able to do this work so well? From your respective place in the ecosystem. And they share that knowledge with the audience. So now, if I'm a program manager of the ESO, I might have a background in marketing. I might have a background as a founder, but now I'm building a founder community. Well, now listening to ecosystem scale, I have a better understanding of how universities work. I have a better understanding of how corporates work. I understand the values of trust and social capital, right? Things that I might have, employed before naturally, but I never really had words for or a framework for to scale across my efforts. Now I have those things. And I can go about becoming an ecosystem builder, developing as an ecosystem builder in a much more intentional way that reflects the expert level of ecosystem builders across the nation from various perspectives.
That's awesome. I need to check it out. I think we got the link here. If you're watching on YouTube, we just sent that out. So definitely check out Ecosystem Scale with Aaron Taylor. Anika, you want to tell us a little bit more about some of the storytelling channels that you have?
Yeah, sure. I have a handful. We already mentioned the podcast. I have several ideas for next season. What I don't have yet is partners who can help me pull that off financially.
Mm.
So, hey, if you're listening and you want to help partner, you should first partner, of course, with the Ecosystem Builder Show and support Richard and Austin for the awesome work they're doing. And then once they are fully funded, come and talk to me. So thank you. I worked on that one. So I have the podcast, one of the most accessible formats, I think. I mean, a podcast, if you're an audio learner. I write a newsletter every 2 weeks called Impact Curator. That one is totally free. It's kind of a look behind the scenes of the life of an ecosystem builder. I share tools, resources, insights, whatever you need to do your work well with impact and without burning out along the way. So that's really easy to sign up for, and you just get it, which is nice. And it really is, I always describe it as my love letter to our community of ecosystem builders. I put a lot of heart into it because this work is so important to me. And I want to support ecosystem builders from the comfort of their laptop, phone, wherever they read their newsletters. I still experiment with different blog formats just to see what works. Every now and then I feel really strongly about something and I'm like, I just need to write it out, and then I may as well share it with other people. I also did a series of ecosystem builder deep dives where I, based on interviews I've done with people, I looked into, so what are they really good at? How do they do it? Why does it work? And how can you implement the same approach in your ecosystem? And we talked about tools and resources and that kind of thing. So that's been really fun. I use social media mostly to share that content, but also to just be part of the conversation. I really enjoy hanging out on the eShop Commons. For those who don't know, it's an online home, kind of a platform for ecosystem builders. It's also free to join. We have conversations, we have live calls. There's a lot of resources on there for ecosystem builders. And then, of course, yeah, I have the book coming out. And that was really the desire to turn so much of what I've learned from the podcast into a more tangible format. I don't know if people know this, but like once you stop paying for hosting, your podcast will forever vanish from the internet. I was like, oh no, what if the evil overlords take over one day and they're like, oh, we're not spending any server space on podcasts anymore. I was like, oh no, I need to put these lessons into a more tangible format. And in my dream world, it's the kind of book that people read and they start taking notes and they highlight and they scribble in the margins and just, really interact with the medium. So those are different formats and channels that I play in and really enjoy playing in. And what they all have in common is I really want to focus on practitioners. I had this one rule when I started the podcast a few years ago: no thought leaders ever. Because when I was ecosystem building and I would read the books, I'd be so inspired and be like, cool. So, like, how do I do this in rural Virginia? How do I do this in Toronto, Canada? Like, I'm not a multiple exited founder with millions in the bank who can just walk up to any university and be like, hey, can you give me some space for my startup events? And then can you throw me a few $1,000s to pay for pizza and beer every month? That's just not the reality for 95% of us. Like the ecosystem builders I talked to in Fargo, North Dakota, Lincoln, Nebraska, Anchorage, Alaska, are really inspired by these foundational works, and as we all are, I think. But finding stuff that they can actually implement was rare. So that was the rule behind the podcast. That's also what drove the book is I want the messy middle. I want the stuff that is really nuanced, that is much more complex than you see in any kind of polished final version. Tell me what's hard. Tell me why you can't go to sleep at night. Tell me about these really hard, messy things. And more often than not, what we keep talking about is the personal side of this work. The personal cost is how do you handle when you can't find funding for your work? How does that feel for someone who's so devoted to their community to do this work and has these great ideas and also has what it takes to implement them and just can't get the support locally to do it? Let's talk about that. I know it's ugly. I know it might bring people down. And I think that's what makes it a good conversation. So, no thought leaders ever, always practitioners first.
It's such a you know, it's such a heart-wrenching experience working alongside community builders, and you see their heart, you see their effort, and the activity just struggles. In listening to Anika, your response, it just reminded me that that's another reason that I started Ecosystem Scale, because I didn't just the reason why I wanted to answer the question of how do you do this work better was because I had seen people contribute years to this work. And they were really standing in the gap for the community. Like, not just building out a program. It's like, no, you are the program. Like, if you have a sick day, a founder doesn't get connected. A founder doesn't have a shoulder to cry on. Like, if you're out of the loop, then the community just falls into inactivity. And next quarter, your local economic developer is pulling even more funding because the traditional economic outputs just aren't there. And it's a heart-wrenching experience to know people who do this work well, with all their heart, and are still struggling to catalyze founder growth that actually scales in a way that translates to funders, whether they be private investors or economic funders, that translates to those entities. Hey, my community is worth your investment. And I think that's kind of like been the drum ecosystem builders have been beating on for a while. Not just look at our founders, but look at my community, look at my city, see what I see when I go to the coffee shop, when I go to the local library, when I go to the local workspace.
I think something that's hitting on is like, how many times have you all met with the founders and it's like they're so negative around the community, but you as an ecosystem builder are seeing all the things that they're not seeing of the positivity. And it's like, how can we do the storytelling? Like, how do we get better at storytelling so that way they're not confined to their individual perspective, but they can kind of more broadly see what actually is true beyond their experience? Or if what they are experiencing, if you're like, yes, I've heard that from multiple things, like I hear your experience, but here's also here's how that's being addressed, or here's what we need to address that. Like, I feel like sometimes it's so easy to get for founders to share, or even other ecosystem builders, honestly, to share the negative when we see so much more than that from our seat. I don't know. As you were saying that, I was just kind of thinking about that.
I
I'll
think
let.
you got to host hype events. You got to do hype storytelling. And there's an important thing here that I always tell clients and when I host workshops is I don't want you to sweep anything under the rug.
Mm.
I think coming to terms with the challenges and naming them, that's your starting point. As you said, Austin, it's like, yeah, I'm hearing this from other founders. I'm totally with you. That's what I hear. And what can we do to change that? That's where you turn the conversation into a conversation of hope, forward-looking optimism. And I really do think events, which is really just in-person storytelling and any other kind of storytelling, is focus on the strength, focus on what's unique. Don't try to be the next Silicon Valley. Grow your own. I think that was the motto of one of the eShip summits was stop looking everywhere else and just focus on what you're really good at. Like coming back to Richmond, great at craft beer, beards, flannel shirts, co-working. That was 2015, 2018. But that's what they were really good at. And they're like, okay, let's own that and not try to also be the best at, like, I don't know, make up something. Like, we're not going to be the capital of the best skiing and outdoor adventure, even though they have great outdoor. We're not going to be the best in X, Y, and Z, but here's what we're really good at based on who we are as a community, what our culture supports, so on and so forth. That's how you get better. Or maybe just show a wider spectrum of good stories. But I think storytelling only works if people have an ear, if people are listening, and that means inviting them in to share stories, consume stories, talk about stories, and kind of be part of that thriving ecosystem.
What I've noticed
Yeah,
and realized.
I wouldn't.
Go ahead.
No, well, it's so interesting. I was curious what Anika would answer because I have a very cynical response for that question. I've been less a community builder. Not. I've been less a community champion these days, and more so a founder champion. I'm not so much worried about making the case to founders about the local community. I'm more so focused on founder success. I think, man, like in and of itself, that is such a very intense battle. The founder journey is crazy, especially right now for so many reasons: competitiveness, technology, federal funding, private investors. It's a lot going on, and so I've been focusing my work on if I can help, if I can get better at helping founders to scale, well, then the narrative of the community begins to build itself around successful founder activity.
That's also the Chris
And
Hively in you, right? Like that's it. That's
that is very
principle,
much,
right?
it is. Yes, that's very astute of you to say. It is. It is.
I also had the pleasure and opportunity to learn under Chris for 2.5 years in the Triangle community, and so
yeah,
there was so much that you were saying that I was like, yep. Like,
but we have to also point out it's really sad that we have to make decisions like that. Again, I think that's one of the complexities of this work. What brought you into becoming an ecosystem builder? Not just your belief in founders, but probably more directly your belief in your community.
Topophilia. Another Chris.
Yes, very much. Yes,
Love of place.
very much so. And then it gets kind of like plucked away, like experience by experience. And especially now, given the current climate in the innovation ecosystem, it gets plucked away to, okay, when we have scarce resources, right, and limited bandwidth among startup community champions and ecosystem builders, what do we have to focus? What do we have to be sure to prioritize? And for me, to Austin's point, yes, I default to the founder.
Well, I think we could do a whole episode on ecosystem builder burnout, and the trials and the tribulations that of where you start with the passion and the excitement and the joy and the belief and then doing it for a little bit and then experiencing the hardships, and it's like, wait, and then I mean, I'd be curious of the group here, how many of you all have taken a break, like a little hiatus, or like kind of, step back for a little bit just to process that kind of burnout and give yourself space to, like, and then from what seeing you're all here, we come back to it. But how do we also come back to it in a healthy way, right? Because I think that's the other side of it, is like, how do you not come back from experiences like that jaded? But like I said, that's a whole episode, and I know we're coming up to the top of our scheduled time together. And I get any kind of response, comments to any of this, or Richard?
I'll let Richard go because I think he had something to say.
Yeah, I think to all are great points about storytelling and why it's important. I've learned over time that storytelling, at least to me, is how you build culture and identity of a place, of a people, of a group. And when we think about, and when the public thinks about startups, they say Silicon Valley or San Francisco or New York City or Boston, because they hear of the stories of those places, of the people who have built the things in the places. And if we tell the stories in our communities, in our neighborhoods, of why we are unique and why the things and people and companies in our neighborhoods and our regions and our communities and cities are unique, then we can be a part of that grander, bigger story, to your point, Anika, of don't try to be the next Bay Area, right? Be Richmond, be Shenandoah Valley, right? Be Louisville, be South Carolina, be Capital Region, right? Be wherever you guys are. And so that was my takeaway and learnings from hearing a lot of this over a lot of time. And I just wanted to say, yeah, Austin.
Oh, I was just going to say, it sounds like I'm 2015 Richmond, honestly. Love beer, bearded, flannel shirt.
Yep.
I'm ready.
Yeah. I just want to say thanks to Anika and Aaron for providing my driving listening, right? This morning, Anika, I was listening to your latest, most recent episode on the engines hubs, the NSF engines. And, I had, for our engine here in upstate New York, produced a video for sustainable manufacturing for FuseHub. And so it was cool to hear about the other engines going on across the country. And Aaron, you sent me that episode with Charlton after we were all together, and I was driving back from Philly listening to that. And I also recently listened to your episode with Chris Wink, and it was kind of cool to listen to all of these. So thank you guys for doing what you do and providing this content and this storytelling for me and so many others as we are going about our lives, so we can learn from it. We got a bunch left on this on the show notes, but I don't want to
subscribe for part 2. Definitely gonna have you all back. There's so much more we could dive into. I mean, we scratched the surface of storytelling, and I have so many more questions. But
can I ask a closing question, and then can we do very quick lightning round?
Yeah.
Anika, let's start with you.
Mhm.
How can the community help you? How can the
Mm.
ecosystem builders out here help you? What do you need right now?
Right now, I need $7,000 between today and June 19th to get this book into the world. So these are the costs. I have costs of about $12,000 to produce the first print edition of It Takes a Valley. So I need to raise those funds. The good news is if it gets overfunded, the next kind of expansion pack, if you will, is going to be the audiobook version. So if we get it up to $15,000, I will produce an audiobook so that all of the readers who don't like to read can listen to it while they are driving and
That's
consume the book
neat.
that way. So there's a current Kickstarter going on. Support, and this is what I've realized over the last few weeks is, yes, you are supporting me in getting this book across the finish line. I'm the first woman in our space to write a book. I am not in a position with a great job, or, I mean, I have a great job, don't get me wrong, but I pay my own bills. I don't have a startup exit that can allow me to just pay for everything out of pocket. So I really need the community to step in and help me support this. But I think the greater goal is it also validates all the people mentioned in the book and all the unsung heroes ecosystem building who are not in the book, but who do this work day in and day out and whose story never gets told. So by supporting that book, it sends a signal to the field that this work matters and that these stories are worth telling.
I love it. I put the link visible on the video, but also if you're watching on YouTube, it's currently in the chat. If you're watching and we're not live, definitely check the description below for the link to that Kickstarter. I'm super excited. I've loved your social posts promoting the book because it's been so many familiar faces.
Yeah.
And to see their quotes in there. So I'm really excited for the book, and check it out.
Anika, so I just went on Kickstarter as you were speaking and backed the tier that gives me 2 books. And so I'll keep one and
Yes.
give one to an ecosystem builder in the community to be determined.
Awesome.
Maybe that's our show giveaway on the show.
Yeah, it should be. That's
Ooh.
awesome.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Aaron, what about you? What do you need?
Just engage with the show. Be patient with me. It's my first podcast, and the first season, the sound quality drastically improves over the course of the podcast, but they're all good. I wouldn't want to miss one single episode because it really is rich in knowledge. And so just listen to what the speakers are saying and listen to the patterns that you hear. I would love to connect with any of the audience on LinkedIn. Aaron D. Taylor, my middle initial, D as in Delta, or Demetrius. But and you know, typically I'm in, you talked about are we taking a hiatus, and I was like, well, you know, technically I'm taking one now. So you know, my calendar is fairly open and flexible, so I'd love to have virtual calls with more ecosystem builders and more founders. That's how I'm improving my own practices. That's how I'm improving the podcast. That's how I'm building my network. So please listen to the podcast. Leave a comment if you enjoyed anything on the podcast, and connect with me on LinkedIn, and let's set up a virtual call. And I'd love to learn more about who you are, what you do, and where you are.
I think one thing we're hitting on is like the thing about storytelling is it's not just a storyteller. Like we all have a role in storytelling, even if we're not creating. But it is on all of us to amplify the stories and to support the stories that are being told. So if you're listening to this and like, I'm not a storyteller in my ecosystem, it's not my skill set, like you still have a role within the storytelling of your ecosystem. And so it is just like Aaron and Anika shared, it's like following along, subscribing, letting others know that these stories exist. You know, to Richard's point, find these, buy the book and share those stories with others. Like, we all have a role in storytelling, even if it's not creating the story. We can still share the story. We can retell the stories, right? But storytelling is on all of us.
Yeah. For the second book, comment below if you want it. And the first person to listen to all of this through here right now is your offer. The first comment below that says they want the book, they will get it.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I love it. Richard, you just got me over the threshold, by the way.
What do you
over
mean?
the $5,000.
Oh.
Like, I've been working towards it, and you just put me over the edge. So yay!
Hold on.
You.
We got this. We got this in the.
There you go.
Congratulations for getting over the threshold. We did it together, all of us.
Thank you.
Oh, that's awesome.
It takes a valley.
It takes the valley.
There you go.
Well done.
7,000 to go.
That's what I heard.
Lightning round. Who's ready?
So ready. Born ready.
Okay. Here's the format. I will read out a prompt or a question. Give me your one-line answer. In this order, we will go Anika, Aaron, Austin, then myself. Then I'll go next question. All right. Anika, to you, your go-to summer beverage.
Aperol Spritz.
Aaron.
Root beer.
Austin.
I'm gonna go with a margarita.
Ooh. Iced vanilla latte or lemonade.
Okay.
All right. Spend the summer anywhere for 3 months. Where are you going, Anika?
Italy.
Aaron.
Jamaica.
Austin.
Can I be more specific to like the beaches of Italy, or plus travel?
Okay. I want to do Hawaii. I haven't been yet.
Okay.
48 states, and I just need Alaska, Hawaii. All right. Best ecosystem advice you've received, Anika.
Just start and let the work teach you.
Aaron.
There are going to people who tell you no. Fuck them.
That's amazing. I would say keep founders the focus.
Yeah. Mine is just show up and be in the room. That's half the battle, right? Just show up. Keep showing up. Best ecosystem advice you've given. As you guys think about that, let's do a not sponsored by Polar. Please sponsor us. Anika.
Start with trust.
Yeah. Aaron.
I have no idea. Build with the end in mind.
It's a good one.
I would say like keep going. Just like keep pushing on.
Keep going. Yeah. I mean, similar to mine, right? More at bats. Just keep doing it. More at bats. Do more faster, right? All right. Unique ways you've seen communities do storytelling. Anika.
I'll tell you my favorite, most recent example. There's not a one-liner, but I try to keep it short. It's a small town in the Southern Valley called Buena Vista. I visited today. Their Main Street, they were in a Main Street exploration. They had 7 people on board. They surveyed their community of 4,379 people, something like that. What do you want to see? One of the top 3 answers was an independent bookshop.
Okay.
So 7 people got together and started this small independent bookshop because the community asked for it. And one of the owners of the bookshop, Jen Carpenter, wrote a rom-com set in their small town about the town's librarian. And it is just delightful because I can picture the whole rom-com book taking place in this small town, and it celebrates everything I love about small towns.
Wow. Aaron?
I would. This is not like super creative, but I would have to say, it's now going to be my standard. Getting a third party to do your storytelling for you. I worked extensively in trying to work in storytelling as an element to programming and initiatives, and it had very still limited impact, better than none, but still limited. And it wasn't until very recently at the Technically conference, and talking to Chris when interviewing him for the podcast, and talking to him outside of our interview, where he really impressed upon me. It's like, look, honestly, at the ecosystem level, you all just don't have the bandwidth to effectively tell your story. You need an objective perspective that really kind of captures the human element of the work that of the ventures that founders are running, and the work that ecosystem builders do, across the community and the ecosystem. So you need a designated storyteller, and they need to be kind of like that objective, outside, committed storyteller. So that's kind of like just my gold standard right now for storytelling. To get someone else to do it.
I can see that. Austin?
Yeah.
I would say like billboards or short films.
For me, it's this yearbook, Entrepreneurship Indiana.
You were telling me about that. Yes.
Indiana created a digital and large format print, that big, 100 stories celebrating entrepreneurs from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds. And they do this every year. And they pay local creatives to go take pictures, to write the stories. They support a nonprofit organization that puts all the spread together. And they do this all in-house using local Indiana talent. Amazing.
I saw a copy of that last week for a founder that's in town, or just across the river. It was awesome.
Amazing. All right, a couple more here, and then we can go have happy hour. What can't you live without right now, Anika?
Coffee forever and always. 2 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon.
Oh
yeah,
God.
it is just my rocket fuel.
Aaron?
My phone, it keeps me connected. Right now, I'm not where I typically am. I'm working from a different state. And so my phone, it keeps me connected to LinkedIn. It keeps me connected to my friends.
Yeah. Austin?
Since I'm not repeating, I'm going to say air condition right now.
That hot. Okay. My calendar. If it's not on my calendar, it's not real. I'm so packed, so busy. Yep. I need to put meetings and the tasks I need to do on my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Show and tell with something within arm's reach, something wacky, something fun. What you got?
This one says, write, edit, scream, repeat.
Yes.
So I keep a very tidy desk because that's how I write the best. And it's just my reminder that screaming is part of the writing process. But after that, you repeat. So you just keep going.
Cool.
You all can't see it, but my ring light.
All right.
There you go.
There it is.
My mom got me this ring light for to start my podcast. So it's
Thank you, Mom.
so it's directly tied to our talk now and everything. But she was a strong proponent of me starting a podcast, and I was still kind of hesitant about it. And while I was still debating whether I was going to do it or not, I got this large Amazon package at my apartment doorstep, and in it were microphones and 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 the ring light. My mom had already gotten me starter podcast equipment.
That's
Amazing.
Yeah.
Love that.
I'm gonna go with my reminder sticky note. So I went through Faye Horowitz Way Builders cohort last fall. And one thing she challenged us to do at the end of the program was just write down kind of your takeaway and commitment. And so mine says more empowered contributors and community stewards. The idea of okay, being an ecosystem builder is great, but how do we really empower others also? And with that, kind of build a full community of community builders and ecosystem builders.
Wow. Mine are these flyers I just need to go put up around town. And they are Good Neighbor Fund flyers because we have micro grants to give out and I need people to apply for them.
So if you live in the Capital Valley region, scan that QR code on the screen right now.
I got $1,000 for you.
Curious. I'm curious what the feedback is from founders on that.
Yeah.
On the amount. So I'll keep me in the loop. Keep me in the loop on that.
I will. I've heard varying things. Some think it's too small, and not impactful.
I'm
And
sure.
some say that's just exactly what I need to buy my first piece of equipment or my expansion piece of equipment or take this course. And then it's that and the community support that surrounds it, right?
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd love to talk to you. Yeah.
And let's just each celebrate a win to close out lightning round. Anika.
Richard Lynn just pushed my Kickstarter campaign across the $5,000 threshold, which brings me so much closer to 12,000.
Yeah, that's amazing. In May, I went to 2 ecosystem events where I got to meet, amazing people. The Technically Builders Conference in Philadelphia and the See the South Capital Summit in Charlotte, North Carolina. And opportunities have arisen from both of those events that I'm pursuing this month. And I'm part of one right now. So just really appreciative to see, how the completion of season 1 has helped facilitate relationships and extended reach throughout the East Coast for my personal brand.
Amazing.
That's awesome. I think for me, for our subscribed listeners, they know we're organizing Startup Week right now. So we had a big win, and we drove across the river into Indiana, and or actually had a virtual call with our friends in Indiana to secure an entire day for our Startup Week to be hosted in Indiana, and really show our ecosystem that we truly do function as a region, and how can we spotlight what's happening just across the river, and really just, I don't know, bring that regional approach. They were super excited for the opportunity, and so a lot of great conversations that are coming from that, and they're just excited to be invited, involved, because this hasn't happened before. It's always been only Louisville for our Startup Week.
Is the word you guys use Kentuckiana?
Some people will use Kentuckiana. Some people will say Indiaki, which is even worse. Yeah.
Okay. My win is that in the past week, really, after going to New York Tech Week, after talking to a lot of folks, including our dear friend Eric Parker and many, many others, I have more clarity on how we are going to build Max Q, which for those who are uninitiated is the entrepreneurship hub, entrepreneurship community clubhouse that I'm building in the capital region. We have physical space, we have a building. We need to figure out how to structure everything else, including a renovation and a community and funding pathways and things like that. So that's very exciting for me.
Congratulations. That's huge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Austin, do you want to close this out?
Yeah, well, I appreciate everyone for sticking on with us, whether you're watching live or on the replay. Make sure you follow us on LinkedIn for episode announcements of guest announcements and future episodes. Subscribe on YouTube. And we are working on making this a audio version so you can listen in the car on your way to wherever you go. But we would love for you to join live. We'd love for your engagement in the chat. We're live every Friday around 3-ish Eastern. So we'd love to have you join live. And we had a great group of guests here. We'd love for you to connect with any of us individually and let us know your comments in the chat. And if you want to be the first to leave a comment around the book, you'll get that copy of Anika's book. So last thing is, if you'd like to be a guest, if you have a story to tell and to share, we'd love to have you on. Just send us a message on LinkedIn. And we will see you in the next episode. Thank you, Aaron and Anika, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
It's been a huge pleasure. Thank you so much.